Then of course I gotta go on the TACACS server and configure the TACACS server to authorize and grant level 15 access to the connected user to router 2. So then I go to the TACACS server and I configure the authorization attribute to begin with. I go under policy elements. It makes sense. Then I go to device administration because I want to configure authorization with device administration. Shell profiles. I say create. And give it a name. Let's say privilege level 15. I go under common tasks and I say default privilege level to be assigned to the user static value of 15. I say submit. But this is useless if it's not applied. It's like an access list which is configured but not applied. Because then the access policies are controlling how to get authenticated and how to get authorized. So I go under default device admin authorization. And I create a new rule in here, which for whatever reason the create button is grayed out. This is another bug in Mozilla this time. Let's use Internet Explorer. So I'm not too lucky today. (1/100). We go to access policies, default device admin, authorization, and we create an authorization rule. We give it a name, whatever the name is. First rule. It's enabled by default, of course. And we have to, when you define authorization rule, you have to say based on what conditions in here you're going to match on the request received from the authenticator. You have to match on the incoming request something from the incoming request attributes. And if you match on that incoming request based on those conditions, then what is the authorization you want to apply? So it's like a route map or a crypto map where you have conditions like match statements to match on the incoming TACACS request. And if you match on that request, then you have set actions, which in my case is what is the shell profile you want to apply to that session. So I'm going to say in here, like in my case, I'm going to say identity group doesn't matter. If the user who gets authenticated is in all groups, which by default it is, so I'm going to use a very simple condition, then assign the shell profile of privilege level 15 and save changes. So now if I tell it again, from router 2 to router 2, I should now get assigned a level of 15 directly. And there we go, I'm in level 15 directly. Show privilege level. And there we go. Exit. Now also let's do command authorization, because currently if I have a level of 15 assigned, it means I can do whatever I want on the router. And again, you may not want to give this access, Because as I said, we have different level of network engineers in a network which are less experienced or more experienced, and you don't want to make sure that a junior doesn't accidentally does a debug on the router, on a core router, and says logging console debugging, and it blows off the router, which means it's going to be a total network down situation. You want to make sure that that engineer has access to only specific commands which he needs to perform his day-to-day job. It means we go on router 3, and configure command authorization, which means we say conf t and we say AAA authorization commands for which privilege level, and by default all commands have a level of 0, 1, or 15. So if you want to authorize all of them, it means you go to, let's say I'm going to authorize only level 15 commands, which means configure level commands. Give it a name to the list, likewise not a default name because it gets applied to all VTI, constant, and HTTP. I'm going to say commands 15, give it a name of 15, not 15, let's say command authorization command, let's say authorization of type command, and I'm going to say to that group as well, I want to authorize all level 15 commands via the TACAC server with a fallback on the local database if TACAC server is not available. Likewise, I got to apply that list to the VTI lines. Authorization commands, authorization commands for level of 15, and what is the list? Now by default, the authorization of privilege level 15 commands does not apply to configuration commands, but to all other level 15 commands like show commands. Which it means if I want to authorize level 15 configuration commands, it is one global command, AAA authorization config commands. So without these commands, all the conf t level commands, so whatever I type in from conf t is now going to get authorized via the TACAC server. Only the other level 15 commands like show commands are going to be authorized. So I need this command in there. So I've enabled this. Now next I got to go on the ACS server, configure under policy elements to which commands do I allow that user access to. So policy elements, device administration, command sets, and we say create. We give it a name, let's say TACAX user set, TACAX user set. Of course, you're going to give in here relevant names, not random names. And I'm going to permit to that user access to all commands. So I'm going to click in here, I'm going to use the following option. Permit any commands that is not listed in the table below. That's one option, which means I'm going to give him access to all commands except what's going to be configured under that list. Or I can choose to specifically grant access to some commands. That's what I'm going to do. If I want that user, let's say I want that user that when it connects to router 2 to be able to just configure, let's say, router rep. So to get to router rep, the user needs access to configure terminal to begin with. So I'm going to say add. Then he needs access to router rep. And then he needs access to network statements under router rep. And to passive interface statements, but nothing else. Say submit. Now, I've defined the authorization command list set, but if it's not applied, it's useless. I gotta go back to my access policy, and now I'm gonna say that when that user is authenticated, not only grant him privilege level 15 to the shell profile, but also control which commands he can configure on the router. To do that, we first have to go to the customize option in here, because by default, that authorization option of command authorization is not active by default. You gotta go under customize, and I'm gonna say command sets is available authorization result. Say OK. Say save changes. I go back to my rule edited, and I'm gonna put in here. So now I have my set of conditions to match on the incoming tag as request. And if I match on that request as in the condition, then not only I'm going to assign this shell profile, but I want to assign a specific command set to be allowed for that user to type in on the router, which is the one I have configured. So I say I remove this one, deselect, and select TACACS user set. Okay. And say save changes. Now let's tell it again from router 3. TACACS user. TACACS user. I'm at level 15. I should get access to conft. And if I say interface loopback 0, I should not get access to that configuration. Which, because I got access, pretty much this means that I have misconfigured something in there. So let's make sure that on router 2 I have configured properly the authorization of commands, which this command is in there, and commands of 15 is authorization command is the configuration. And if we say show run section line VTI, let's make sure I have applied that command authorization list under line VTI. And authorization commands was only applied to line 4, and probably I am now connected to one of the other lines, so that was a problem. I accidentally applied authorization commands list only to line VTI 4, not to 03 as well, which of course the VTI lines are chosen randomly, the first available ones being chosen, and probably I match on VTI 03. So let's go also on VTI 03, apply that command as well, disconnect from router 3, reconnect again to authenticate, show priv, I got a level of 15, conft, and I should not get access to interface loopback 0. And for sure it works now, because when I said conft, it was a bit of a delay, which confirmed that TACACS was authorizing me, and this should not work now. There we go. Because the TACACS server doesn't allow me to do that. But router rep, network 555000 is going to work. That's allowed. Passive interface default is going to work. That's allowed. But something else like, for example, max paths should not work. Maximum paths 2. There we go, doesn't work. So it works as expected. Now the last part is going to do command accounting. So we go on router 3, on router 2. And if we want to account for what commands, so for what the user does when connected to this router, we say AA accounting. And we can account for commands or for when the exec session has started and ended. I care about the commands, but of course also for in general you will also care about when the exec session was started and ended. A accounting exec, let's say exec accounting, and I'm gonna go likewise to, I'm gonna say start stop So both when the exec session starts and when it stops. So the user connects and disconnects, and I'm gonna of course do the accounting via my group of TACACS servers. And AA accounting commands for level of 15, give it a name, command accounting group, command accounting start stop likewise, and to the group of TACACS Plus servers. I cannot do local accounting, is not supported. Then line VTI 04, I gotta apply the configuration. So accounting for exec, as this list states, and accounting for commands of level 15, as this accounting list states. Pretty much I'm done. On the TACACS server, there's nothing to be configured for accounting to work. As long as the TACACS server is properly integrated with the network access device, accounting it is going to work. So let's confirm that now that before I configured accounting, nothing was accounted of what the user has configured on the device. If we say monitoring reports, launch monitoring report viewer, if we go to favorites and accounting is not there, we go to catalog, a protocol, and TACACS accounting. It should be empty because when the user connected previously and got access to those router rip commands, accounting was not enabled. And as you can see, it's an empty table. Now if we turn it again from router 3 to router 2, TACACS user, conf t, router rep, network, let's say passive interface loopback 0, and network 136.1.38.136.1.0.0, I should see those commands being accounted for on the TACACS server and say exit now. Let's reload. And as you can see, the TACACS user has been accounting for issuing commands of configure terminal, then router rep, then passive interface loopback 0, then a network statement. Okay, the last step to do is we're gonna verify the local fallback account, local fallback authentication and authorization. So what this means is that per my config on router 2, it means that if the TACACS server is not reachable, then I'm gonna fall back on both authentication and authorization exec and command exec authorization on the local database of users, which means show run include username. If I want this user when it gets connected to have a level of 15 assigned, because that's being achieved via authorization exec, so this means that when the user connects after it's going to be authenticated, I'm going to authorize exec access per the local database, which means I'm going to give him a privilege level as configured at the user level. Now let's break the TACACS communication in a simple way, which means I'm going to just remove this server from being configured in a TACACS server. So I'm going to invalidate the TACACS configuration. So now when I telnet in, the router should try to authenticate me via TACACS, but it's going to fail because there's no server defined. It's going to try to authenticate me then via the local database. If authentication is successful, then to give me shell access, it's going to likewise try to go to TACACS. It's not going to work. then to the local database, which means it's going to give me a privilege level as configured on that username of router 2, which that username has a privilege level of 1 probably in there by default. So if we go on router 3 and we turn it again, first of all, we see obviously that I'm connected. I'm going to get authenticated against the local database because I have a capital U in there. It's not via TACACS. Of course, that can be changed around, but the default behavior, which means R2 user and R2 user. So show priv, I got assign a level of 1. Because that's authorization exec states, do authorize the user to shell low as configured, which means because the user has a level of 1 assigned, then it gets a level of 1. If we change this user configuration to have a level of 15, then once I turn it again, it's going to get assigned a level of 15. If I turn it again now, R2 user and R2 user, R2 user, maybe I misconfigured the password. Let's make sure. Probably added a space in there that's very difficult to spot. Show run include username. If we double click the password, doesn't seem to have a space, so it should work. Let's try again. R2 user with a R2 user. So probably there's a space in there. Let's remove and reapply that command, the local username. Because when I double click the line, it looks like it has a space in there in the end. So username router to user privilege 15. Password router to user. If you say show run include username again, and you double click the line, there is no more space in there. So that is the problem. So make sure you're aware of that. When you configure the user, if you say username test, password test, and you hit question mark, username test, password test, and you hit question mark, then the password is going to be test with a space in there. So now let's turn it again and it should work. Router to user with a router to user, and I got a level of 15 as expected. And there we go. Which means I should get access to pretty much everything on the router, because locally I have as long as I have a level of 15, locally I get access to all commands in there. Okay, a couple of questions here from two from Matthew. One which Matthew states, think I was not sure if we could use EAP on a WAN circuit. Yes, you can use EAP, but again, the PPP server can validate the PPP client's credentials, even if it uses PAP or CHAP, still via radius to a remote radius server. A question from Matthew. Christian, can you use wildcards in commands to allow any argument? Yes, you can do. Correct. You can use a wildcard, like if you say configure, and then wildcard is going to allow all configure, terminal configure, network configure, everything. You can use a wildcard in there. Correct.